After breaking his neck, a former lifeguard warns others about the dangers of surfing and swimming. That's next on Perspective New Jersey. Hi, I'm Nora Mushanik and welcome to Perspective New Jersey. Back in 2001, a hurricane churned up the surf in the Atlantic Ocean off of New Jersey. Tempted by the big waves, a Cape May lifeguard went surfing, but in a horrible accident, he broke his neck. After long surgery and years of therapy, he's regained the use of his limbs and is actually surfing again. But he's making it his mission to warn others about the dangers of spinal injuries while surfing and swimming. Here to tell his story is Chad DeSatnik, who is a Lower Township resident, and something of a miracle that you're sitting here today, Chad, given what happened. And also, you are the Northeast coordinator of Life Rolls On, and we'll learn more about that in a second. Thanks for being here.
Sure.
And joining us also is Kerry O'Connor, who is the Director of Public Relations for the Magee Rehabilitation Center in Philadelphia, considered one of the best rehab hospitals in the nation and part of the Jefferson Health System.
Hi, Nora.
Correct? How
Yes.
are you? Nice to have you here,
Nice
Kerry.
to be here.
Chad, first I want to start with you. And you have to be one of the luckiest guys on earth given what happened. Do you feel lucky?
I do. Every day I get up and very fortunate to have full use of my limbs.
At this point, do you feel pain? Do you have pain? What is your situation?
I do have a little bit of pain, but none to complain of. Doctors told me I might not walk, so the fact that I can walk is a gift.
I want to take you back to that day in 2001. Set the scene for us. Tell us what happened. Big waves, you want to be a part of it? You're a surfer?
Absolutely. I was down the beach during Hurricane Umberto. It was September 30th, 2001. Went down to check the waves. They were 6 or 7 feet. Decided to surf at Poverty Beach and caught some really good waves that morning. And around 11:30, I caught the wave that changed my life.
Tell us about that. What was different about that wave? What happened to you?
Probably got a little greedy. Rode the wave in too far to the shoreline and realized where I was. I looked down the beach. Parallel with me riding a wave was one of my friends who was standing in about ankle-deep water. So I had to make a split-second decision to either run up the beach or dive behind the wave. I opted for the latter, and what happened to me was the wave picked me up and threw me headfirst into about 3 inches of water, real shallow shore break.
Now, you paint the picture for me. You're diving backwards, and basically it's you described it at one time as a pile drive into the beach?
Right. What happened, I tried to dive behind the wave instead of running up the beach. And when I dove behind the wave, because of the force of the waves during the hurricane, it basically picked me up and drove me headfirst into about 3 inches of water. And I didn't have a chance to brace myself. I didn't have a chance to put my arms out in front, which ultimately I probably would have preferred a broken wrist over a broken neck. But that was the result of what happened.
So at that moment, do you know you're in trouble?
I did. I was sitting on the beach. One of my friends who was standing in about 3 inches of water came walking up to me. I was sitting on the beach, which I thought was about 5 minutes. It turned out to be about 45 minutes.
Really?
So I had a concussion, and I knew something was wrong, but I kind of didn't accept it at that moment.
When you say you knew something was wrong, what did it feel like, or what was telling you that this isn't right, I've hurt myself?
I had some numbness in my arms, and I had an upset stomach, which is, I guess, a sign of the concussion and the injury, the trauma that I suffered to my neck.
So you're sitting there for 45 minutes on the beach, and then I can't believe this part of it, but you drive yourself to the hospital?
I did actually drove home before I went to the hospital. I slept on a broken neck in my own bed, and then it did not end up going to the hospital till the next day.
Really? I didn't realize that part of it. So gradually you realize more and more there's something really wrong here.
There was. I think I really realized the next morning when the pain wasn't any worse or any better that something was really wrong, and I really needed to seek medical attention.
So you go to the hospital, and tell us about that. What happens, and how do you learn that you've got something seriously wrong?
Things progressed very quickly when I went to the hospital. I met Dr. Hershkowitz, who was a neurosurgeon out of Atlantic City Medical Center. They put me through an MRI, realized that there was damage to C6 and C7, which is the cervical, number 6 and 7. And things really progressed. Like I said, he realized that there was subluxation above C6. It wasn't just a stinger, which some football players will, suffer that type of injury. It was a lot more serious than that.
Now, Kerry was good enough to bring along this spine model from Magee, and if you would, I'd like you to point out on here and
Sure.
show us exactly what happened, where your injuries were, and what it meant for you.
Sure. Basically, the cervical spine starts at number 2, which is right here. And if you go down to number 6 and 7, these are the 2 vertebrae that I broke on the posterior side of my neck, which is the back side of my neck.
Okay. Right around here?
Right around these 2 guys right here.
And that meant what for you?
What happened was these 2 vertebrae collapsed, and when they collapsed, there was subluxation above C6. So there was vertical there was an alignment that was out of alignment above C6, which caused that numbness in my arms. That was the pressure on the spinal cord.
And I want to pull Kerry in here for a second, because my understanding is that certain spots along the spine govern certain functions of the body. Tell me a little bit about that.
That's true. Well, the basic rule of thumb is that the spine kind of works like the highway that sends the nerves signals from the brains down to the rest of the body. So the higher an injury will occur, the more damage a patient will have further down. If there happens to be a complete break from the spine, from that point down, the patient will lose most of their function, if not all of their function. So Chad was actually very lucky that he didn't have a complete break so far up on his spine. Otherwise, he might have lost complete control and movement of his body, paralysis all the way down.
And so, just to review for a second, that's what happens when people are totally paralyzed. It's because the injury happens high up, and so that affects everything below. Everything below is...
Right. So wherever that injury occurs, wherever that complete break happens, everything below that will be paralyzed.
Okay, and Chad, the neurosurgeon tells you what?
Neurosurgeon told me that I might not walk and I will not surf again. Pretty strong words. My wife and I just got married in May, and the injury happened in September, so it was a big shock to my wife and myself.
So you had an 11-hour surgery that sounded more like a visit to the auto parts shop,
Sure.
plates and screws and everything else.
Sure.
Tell us about what they did and sort of point out on here if you can.
Sure. What the neurosurgeons did was they took bone from my hip, and they actually fused 5, 6, and 7 to basically create one block of bone that was aided in healing. On the posterior side of my neck, which is the back side, there's 2 titanium rods that were hooked on top of C5 that are also hooked on the bottom of C7. And then on the anterior side, which is the front side of my neck, there's a plate that's screwed into C6 and C7 that kept them equal distance while the bone was healing.
And this did what for you? This allowed you to do what?
This basically created, like I said, a block in my vertebrae so that when they were healing, I didn't lose any alignment issues. There was no vertical or horizontal alignment issues. The trauma that happened to C6 and to C7 were kind of pinching on the spinal cord, but there was no laceration, and that's the main reason why I never had any permanent paralysis.
Okay, we need to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about Chad's campaign to warn others against being injured in the same way. Please stay with us.